Episode 44. Introduction to Systemic Functional Linguistics under Narrative and Generative Scrutiny. No indicator here on my end, but I'm working on it now. Give me just a moment and I'll have the full 5-minute script ready. Hi, I'm Luke, Harry's older brother. Harry's doing the shorts on this channel, and he even came home sitting on Cristiano Ronaldo's shoulders. That's Harry Incorrigible. And I'm joining you from Brighton. Before I hand over to the professor, I just want to say, a few weeks ago, something happened that completely changed how I think about language. My friend Diego nearly lost his life. And it was the professor's analysis, using something called Systemic Functional Linguistics, that cracked the case. You can watch that in episode 43, Socrates' Coffee, linked below. After that, I couldn't just walk away. I had to understand how this framework actually works. So the professor sent me his materials, and I've been working through them. I'm not an expert, I want to be clear about that. But I'm going to try to walk you through the structure before the professor takes over and explains it properly. So, what are we actually looking at here? This model, and you can see it on screen, looks a bit like a set of concentric circles. Almost like the Earth, actually, with different layers. And each layer does something specific. Let me start from the outside and work inwards, because I think that's the most logical way to approach it. At least, that's how I've been trying to understand it. The outermost layer is what the professor calls the context. And within context, there are 3 variables. The first is field. Now, field is essentially what's going on. What is the social activity taking place? What is the subject matter? If I'm texting my mate about football, the field is football. If I'm writing a lab report, the field is science. It sounds simple, but it shapes everything about the language you choose. The second variable is tenor. Tenor is about the relationship between the people communicating. Are you talking to a friend or a professor? Are you being formal or informal? Is there power involved, like a student and a teacher, or a boss and an employee? That relationship changes your language fundamentally, and tenor captures that. The third variable is mode. Mode is about the role language is playing in the situation. Is it spoken or written? Is it a live conversation or a recorded lecture? Is the language doing all the work, or is it supporting something else, like a diagram? Mode is particularly fascinating because the professor's own research extends this into multimodal communication, where images, sound, and text all work together. So those 3, field, tenor, mode, form the outer ring of the model. They describe the context of situation. But here's where it gets interesting, and I have to be honest, this is the part that took me a while to get my head around. These contextual variables don't just describe the situation from the outside. They actually connect directly to the grammar, to the way language is structured internally. And that connection happens through what Halliday called the metafunctions. There are 3 metafunctions. The first is the ideational metafunction. This is how language represents experience, how we talk about the world, about processes, about what's happening, who's doing it, and what's being done to whom. This connects to field. The content of what you're saying shapes, and is shaped by, the ideational layer of the grammar. The second is the interpersonal metafunction. This is how language enacts relationships, how we give and demand information, how we express attitude, how power and solidarity get built into the very structure of a clause. This connects to tenor. The third is the textual metafunction. This is how language organises itself into coherent messages. What you put first, what you treat as given versus new information, how the text flows. This connects to mode. So you have this beautiful systematic connection, field to ideational, tenor to interpersonal, mode to textual. The context shapes the grammar. The grammar realises the context. That's the core insight of the whole model, as far as I can tell. And I think that's genuinely remarkable. Language isn't just words strung together. It's a system of choices that reflects the social situation you're in. Now, below the metafunctions, the model goes deeper into the grammar itself. This is where process types come in, and this is where the analysis gets very precise. Different clause types realize different kinds of experience. Material processes, mental processes, relational processes. Each of these encodes a different way of representing what's happening in the world. The professor will take you through the analysis in proper detail, but just so you have the map in your head, this is where the linguistic toolkit becomes something you can actually apply. Something that can reveal meaning that isn't always obvious on the surface. Something that, as we saw in episode 43, can even save a life. So that's the overview. Context of situation, field, tenor, mode. The metafunctions, ideational, interpersonal, textual. The grammar, process types and clause analysis, and the strata connecting them all. I'm still learning this, and the professor will correct me if I've got anything wrong. But I hope that gives you a map before we go deeper. Professor, over to you.
Scene 2, processes and participants. So now it only begins. Before we go any further, we need to clarify one terminological point, because if we don't, the model will look inconsistent. In the diagram, you may see the term experiential, but Luke, in his introduction, used the term ideational metafunction. Luke is not wrong, neither is the model. Here's why. Halliday speaks of the ideational metafunction as the overarching layer that handles how language represents experience and relates experience within larger structures. That ideational layer actually consists of two components, the experiential and the logical. The experiential is what we are focusing on here, how clauses represent experience, processes, participants, and their configuration. The logical component, by contrast, comes into play when we connect clauses into larger structures, dependencies, projections, expansions, parataxis, hypotaxis. That's where the Greek letter notation usually appears. So when Luke says ideational and you see experiential on the model, there is no contradiction. Experiential is the part of the ideational metafunction that stays inside the clause. For today's purposes, we can treat ideational and experiential as effectively synonymous, as long as we remember that the logical component exists, and we'll address it later. So with that behind us, let's move into the process types. Up to this point, we have been circling the system. Now we step inside it. If we are talking about the experiential metafunction, then we are talking about process types, because experience in language is not just there. It is organized through different kinds of processes, and this is where something very important happens. Different processes come with different participant roles, so the labels change depending on the type of experience being construed. That is the first thing you need to accept. Otherwise, this will look unnecessarily complicated. It is not complicated, it is precise. Now, traditionally, we distinguish 6 main process types with a few intermediate ones. Some models stretch this to 7 or 8, depending on how finely you slice the system. We will stay with the core ones, but I will indicate where things begin to blur. Let us start with the most concrete. Material processes. These are processes of doing, of action, of change in the physical world. Diego drives the car. Matthew runs the experiment. Liam edits the video. Here, the participant who does the action is the actor. The participant that is affected is the goal. Diego, actor, drives the car, goal. Material clauses map physical causation. This is the classic configuration. Actor to process to goal. Something does something to something. Tao Tao also fits this category when he eats bamboo, but we will not lean too heavily on that. Now we move to something less visible, mental processes. These are processes of sensing, thinking, feeling, perceiving. Here the actor disappears. It becomes the sensor, and what is sensed is not a goal but a phenomenon. So your example, Ronnie adores Socrates. Ronnie is the sensor. Adores is a mental process of affection. We can safely put affection in brackets for now. Socrates is the phenomenon. Now, notice what is not happening. Ronnie is not doing anything to Socrates in the physical sense. There is no action transferred. This is not a material process. This is an internal mental orientation toward a phenomenon. And that is why calling Socrates a goal would be misleading. It is not a goal, it is a phenomenon. The labels follow the meaning always. Now, third type, relational processes. These are processes of being, of having, of identifying, of attributing. First, the attributive kind. Tao Tao is hungry. Liam is a skiing fanatic. Matthew is exhausted. Diego is persistent. Here, the participant who carries the quality is the carrier. The quality is the attribute. This is not a quality. It is assignment of a quality. Second, the identifying / equative. Liam is the record holder. Matthew is the analyst. Diego is the survivor from episode 43. Here we are instead identifying or equating. Liam is the token or identified. The record holder is the value or identifier. So the category is carrier attribute, assignment of a quality, versus token value, assignment of identity or equation. Now we move slightly outward, behavioral processes. These sit somewhere between material and mental. They are physiological or psychological behaviors. Matthew is staring at the data set. Liam is wincing. Diego is crying. Here the participant is the behavior. A participant who is behaving. Linguistics occasionally lacks poetic elegance. Now, verbal processes. These are processes of saying, not just saying literally, but any kind of verbal exchange. The professor explains the model. Liam narrates the scene. Diego accuses the system. The participant who speaks is the sayer. The content is the verbiage. If there is an addressee, it is the receiver and occasionally a target. Verbal processes turn language itself into the semantic focus. And finally, existential processes. These are the simplest and in a way the most deceptive. There is a problem. There is a leak in the system. There is a gap in the evidence. There is not really a participant in the experiential sense. It is a structural placeholder. The element that exists is the existent. So the 6 main experiential process types are material, mental, relational, attributive plus identifying, behavioral, verbal, existential. Each realizes a different kind of experience. Each brings its own set of participant roles: actor, sensor, carrier, behavior, sayer, token, value, goal, phenomenon, attribute, verbiage, existent. And these are not fancy labels. They are technical terms for precise meanings. If this looks like overanalysis, it is not. It is the minimal toolkit required to see how language constitutes reality rather than simply describing it. As for Tao Tao, he is in fact hungry, but we need not belabor that. What we do need to belabor gently, rigorously, is the claim that in systemic functional linguistics, the clause is not a neutral container of meaning. It is a meaning-making device embedded in context, and we are not yet finished. We still have to examine circumstances, location, manner, time, cause, accompaniment, and so on. But that, as they say, is a lecture for another time. If you tell me where scene 2 ends in your timing, roughly, then move to circumstances, / then move to the next scene, I can now cut this block at the right place and give you the exact string you'd record. The famous line, "I think therefore I am," is not an existential process in the SFL sense. I think is a mental process of cognition, with I as the sensor and think as the mental process. The am clause that follows is a relational clause. assigning existence or identity, but the core experiential structure is not there is an I, it is I sense that I exist. An existential clause would be something like there is an I, and that is not what Descartes is doing. He is using a mental process to argue the existence of a self, not to realize existence in the grammatical form of an existential clause. So we can keep this as a small, precise reminder. The form of the clause matters as much as its philosophical content. Scene 3, tenor, the interpersonal dimension of meaning. If field is about what is happening, tenor is about who is talking to whom, the social roles, power, and solidarity. The interpersonal metafunction is the grammar of social action. It's how language does things between people. Start with a simple distinction, propositions versus proposals. Propositions are statements about states of affairs. This episode is systematic. We analyzed the experiential metafunction in scene 2. Proposals are social moves, offers, requests, commands, questions, the things we do to one another. Would you like to watch the next episode? Can I send you the reading list? Frame this in a service encounter setting, goods, services, and information. Viewers negotiate access and help, not just facts, upgrading a subscription, asking for clarification, requesting support. These are interpersonal moves. Now, two technical but distinct ways we grade those moves. First, modalization. This concerns probability and likelihood. It answers the question, how likely is this? Modalization is realized by modal meanings expressed through verbs and auxiliaries. Might, could, probably, certainly, will. Examples. This playlist might be useful. Low probability. This playlist will be useful. High probability. Second, modulation. This concerns action, behavior, obligation, advice, and interpersonal pressure. It answers the question what should or must be done. Modulation is realized by verbs and constructions that advise, require, permit, or recommend. Should, must, ought to, can, be encouraged to. Examples, you should watch the next short one, advice/recommendation. You must submit the assignment, obligation/command. You might want to take notes. Gentle modulation, suggestion about behavior. These are different tools. Modalization manages degrees of certainty about propositions. Modulation manages degrees of interpersonal demand or encouragement regarding action. Now, having seen what the interpersonal layer does, we move to the grammar window that shows how it's realized in clauses, the finite and the subject. The finite carries mood and modal meaning, tense and modal auxiliaries that express modalization and modulation, will, might, must, should, could. And the subject anchors responsibility, who is positioned as the actor, the addressee, or the evaluated party. Look at a few clause-level examples and what they do interpersonally. Declarative proposition with modalization. This playlist will be useful. Finite, will, high probability. Subject, this playlist, the thing asserted. Function, strong probability about a proposition. Interrogative proposal with modulation, could you send me the reference? Finite. Could, softens the request, low obligation, polite. Subject, you, the addressee who is being asked to act. Function, a polite request, interpersonal negotiation, imperative modulation. Submit the form. Finite, imperative, 0 explicit finite in English. Mood equals command. Subject, you, implied. Responsibility placed on the addressee. Function, obligation/instruction. Strong modulation. Declarative with modulation. Advice framed as statement. You should read the introduction before the tutorial. Finite, should, modulation, recommendation. Subject, you, the student addressed. Function, graded behavioral instruction. For service encounters, watch how modalization and modulation shape outcomes. A customer asks, will this upgrade include transcripts? modalization, seeking probability confirmation. An agent replies, it will probably include transcripts. Modalization, null-bias, hedged certainty. The agent may then say, you should enable auto-download to access them. Modulation, behavioral recommendation. To keep this introductory and focused, we use modalization, probability, and modulation, action, behavior, obligation, as the central interpersonal tools you need now. Don't worry about deeper appraisal taxonomies here, those are volume 2. We're simply giving you the grammar handles you can apply immediately. Inatindi recap tenor equals who talks to whom and how. Interpersonal meaning does social work. Propositions, statements versus proposals, moves. Modalization equals probability / likelihood, might, will, probably. Modulation equals action / behavior / obligation / advice, should, must, ought to. Finite plus subject show where these meanings sit in the clause and who is being asked, told, or evaluated. That's the interpersonal core. It's concise, rigorous, and practical. Once you can spot modalization and modulation and read the finite subject pairing, you can map interpersonal moves across lectures, help desks, and episodes, and you'll be ready to tackle appraisal and multimodality in later volumes. So, and as Matthew has just joined in from LA, we'll use him as an example. Here is a beginner's analysis of the interpersonal metafunction. Box format, complement, and object are interchangeable here. Right, Tao Tao? Key points. Subject. Who is responsible? Matthew. Finite. Needs. Tends adverb. Carries mood and modulation. Modulation. Needs +2 equals obligation / advice. Predicator. To turn up, the action, object, the heat, what the action is directed at. Remember, verb phrase equals finite plus predicator, needs plus to turn up. Modulation is realized in the finite part, needs plus to. Scene 4, mode, and the textual metafunction, theme and rheme. Now we move to the textual metafunction. This one's actually the most straightforward of the three, so I'll keep it concise. The textual metafunction is about how language organizes itself into coherent flowing messages. It's about texture, how a text hangs together. The key concept here is theme and rheme. Every clause has a theme. This is what comes first, what the speaker puts in the spotlight. Everything else in the clause is the rheme. The rheme develops or comments on the theme. So when you say, Ronnie saved my life, Ronnie is the theme. When you say, my life was saved by Ronnie, my life becomes the theme. Same information, completely different focus. The speaker chooses what to put first, and that choice shapes how the listener experiences the message. This choice of theme isn't random, it's systematic. In a well-written text, themes create a chain. Each theme picks up information from the previous rheme, pulling the reader forward. This is what creates texture, what makes a text feel coherent versus scattered. Now here's where it connects to something you've probably encountered on this channel before. When you deliberately break this pattern, when you front something that would normally come later, that's what we call inversion in stylistic analysis. Journalism uses this constantly. Into the cafe walked Diego. That's inversion. The normal theme would be Diego, but by fronting into the cafe, the journalist creates dramatic effect. You'll find detailed analysis of stylistic devices and inversion throughout the channel. Explore those if you want to see how theme choices become rhetorical tools. But the core insight here is simple. Theme and rheme aren't just grammatical labels, they're choices. Language is always a system of choices, shaped by context, realizing meaning in real time, and that's what this entire framework is about. Volume 2 explores multimodal discourse semantics, the framework that could guide how systems actually understand meaning across image, text, sound, and movement. There will be an SFL playlist to make it easier for you. I do realize this is probably one of the most complicated areas of linguistics, but on the other hand, the whole channel was designed on an SFL basis, and you do not need to understand it to follow. However, it is of help, as we have seen in episode 43.
Scene 5. Outro quiz with Luke and Harry. Here's a short outro for Luke with a final check. Right, so that's the journey through Volume 1. The professor has covered contextual variables, all three metafunctions, and how language works as a system of choices shaped by context. Before we wrap, I want to leave you with a quick final check. And yes, my brother Harry is here too. Bored, but who cares? These aren't trick questions, they're just to see if the core ideas have landed. Question 1. If field shapes ideational meaning and tenor shapes interpersonal meaning, what contextual variable shapes the textual metafunction? Question 2. You're writing a formal email to your professor versus texting a mate about the same topic. What changes in the language and why? Question 3. In the clause, "Into the cafe walked Diego," what's been foregrounded as theme, and why might a journalist make that choice? Those 3 questions, the answers are all in the PDF. Work through them if you want to solidify what you've learned.
See you later, alligator. Bye-bye. Oh, and why do skeletons don't fight each other? They don't have the guts, he croaked in his dying breath. End of Volume 1 on SFL.
Well, I saw the genius skating with another board today. Well, Ronnie Caruso skating with another board today. When I asked him what's the matter, this is what I heard him say. See you later, says the skater. After a while, the setup was dialed. See you later, says the skater. After a while, the setup was dialed. Peep the line I'm gonna play now. Don't you know you clocked my style? When he thought of what I told him, nearly made him lose his head. When he thought of what I told him, nearly made him lose his head. But the next that I came by reminded him of what he said. He said, "I'm happy, dear professor." He said, "I'm happy, dear professor. I'll land this side step just for you. Won't you say this semiotics? He'll land this trick just for me." I said, "Wait a minute.